Abandoned buildings are eerie enough on their own. But abandoned prisons where inmates were held in solitary confinement, tortured, and even executed feel particularly chilling. For true crime fans or horror junkies, many former jails are open to the public and offer ghost tours. Here are 8 eerie and abandoned prisons around the U.S., and the stories behind them. 8. Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Built in 1829, Eastern State Penitentiary was one of the most well-known prisons in the world. It housed big-name criminals like Al Capone and bank robber Slick Willie. Prisoners were kept in complete solitude at all times until overcrowding became a problem in 1913. Even when prisoners left their cells, guards would cover their heads so they couldn't see anyone, and no one could see them. The prison closed in 1971 and remained abandoned until 1994 when it reopened to the public as a museum. Shadowy figures, laughter, and footsteps have all been reported as paranormal activity within the prison walls. 7. Ohio State Reformatory, Mansfield, Ohio. The Ohio State Reformatory opened in 1896 and operated for 94 years before its closure in 1990 due to a federal court order citing brutalizing and inhumane conditions. One of the most violent incidents that occurred at the prison was the kidnapping and killing of an employee's wife and daughter, which was carried out by 2 parolees in 1948. 2 years later, the warden's wife was shot dead by a gun that fell on the floor as she was picking up a jewelry case. Years later, the warden himself died of a heart attack in his office. One inmate reportedly killed his cellmate and then stuffed his body under a bunk. The prison now offers tours, and tour guides and visitors alike say they can still hear the warden and his wife having conversations. Parts of the 1993 movie, The Shawshank Redemption, were filmed on site. 6. Fort Delaware, Delaware City. Fort Delaware was built in 1859 as a Union fortress during the Civil War, but was used as a prison for captured Confederate soldiers. It held as many as 12,595 prisoners at one time. The fortress was abandoned in 1944 and became a state park in 1951. Ghost tours are available on the isolated island, which is only accessible by ferry. 5. Alcatraz Island, San Francisco, California. The U.S. Army built a fortress on Alcatraz Island in 1850 for protection during the California Gold Rush and began holding political and military prisoners there in the late 1850s. These prisoners built a new facility from 1909 to 1911 that was taken over by the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 1933. Alcatraz's most famous prisoners include Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, the first Public Enemy No. 1 Alvin Karpis, and Robert Stroud, the so-called Birdman of Alcatraz. The prison closed in 1963 because it was too expensive to continue operations. It opened to the public in 1973 as a national park part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, and now offers tours. 4. West Virginia Penitentiary, Moundsville, West Virginia. West Virginia Penitentiary was built by prisoners in 1866. The cells were 5 by 7 feet, and the facility held 1,000 prisoners during the 1960s. Until the state of West Virginia abolished capital punishment in 1965, 85 inmates were hanged and 9 were executed by electric chair, which the prisoners called Old Sparky. The prison was closed by a court order in 1995 due to inhumane conditions and is open to visitors today. Various movies, television shows, and documentaries have filmed on this location. 3. Pottawatomie County Jail, Council Bluffs, Iowa. Pottawatomie County Jail was built in 1885. It was a squirrel cage jail with 3 floors of revolving cells and side cages. Designed by William Brown and Benjamin Haw and patented in 1881, revolving jail cells aim to minimize the contact necessary between inmates and guards. The jail closed in 1969 and was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1972. Tours of the facility are available, where visitors can still see prisoners' signatures carved into the walls. 2. Wyoming Territorial Prison, Laramie, Wyoming. Built in 1872, Wyoming Territorial Prison held 1,063 hardened criminals of the Wild West, including Butch Cassidy, during its operation. It began as a federal prison when it first opened, then became Wyoming State Penitentiary in 1890. Inmates were required to be silent at all times, wear striped uniforms, and perform hard labor. It closed in 1903 and was used by the University of Wyoming to conduct livestock and crop field research. In 1990, the prison was restored and turned into a museum. 1. Penitentiary of New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico. One of the most violent prison riots in U.S. history occurred at the Old Main building in New Mexico State Penitentiary in 1980 when inmates killed 33 other prisoners, injured 100 more, and took 12 guards as hostages over 36 hours, according to the Daily Beast. Marks from a beheading and charred outlines of bodies are still visible in the concrete floor. Old Main was closed for repairs after the riot and reopened for 18 years before closing again in 1998. The New Mexico Corrections Department has been offering tours since 2012. That's all for today. Join us next time by subscribing and hitting the bell notification.